So I will talk about Torres del Paine intrusive complex, which are Torres del Paine are the Paine Towers. These mountains here are known as the Paine Towers, and this spectacular landscape, it's known as Torres del Paine. This is located in southern Chile, and this is a Miocene intrusive complex. This site is known because it's a world-class place for the study of the evolution and the architecture of magmatic chambers in the upper crust. In particular, it's a shallow layered laccolith, but it's a very good example of a magmatic chamber. Here we have a video of the location of the site. We are in the southern margin of South America in a region called Patagonia. This is part of the Andes Cordillera, in the southern limit of the Andes Cordillera. And here we can see the glaciers of the Patagonian ice fields that control the landscape of this area. And here, this mountain range, it's called the Paine Mountains, or El Cordón del Paine. And here is the Gray Glacier that I will talk later. Regarding tectonics, here is Torres del Paine. This is a zone of subduction, as all the Pacific margin of South America. So it's the main driver of the area. And Torres del Paine is part of the Miocene back arc intrusions and is related to this process of subduction. Here is the Antarctic plate below the South American continent. Here is a satellite image of the area, where we can see the southern Patagonia ice field, which is the largest ice mass in the world outside the poles. So it's very, very huge ice mass. And here is Torres del Paine, located very, very close to the southern Patagonia ice field. And this is a geological map of the area. We can see that it's very close to the border between Chile and Argentina. And this intrusive complex is emplaced in metasedimentary rocks of the Magallanes Fault and Trust Belt. Well, this is a geological map of the area, but I will jump to the geological section. It's more clear. Here we have a west-east section of the area, and here we can see the laccolith. So this intrusion has some interesting characteristics. One is that it's a laccolith, so it's elongated and follow the stratification of the Cretaceous country rocks. The second interesting characteristic is that it's bimodal. So we have granitic rocks and mafic rocks all as part of the same intrusive complex. Another characteristic is that it's layered or stratified. So this is very interesting example for understanding the architecture and the evolution of magmatic chambers because of this reason. And this was emplaced in Miocene in different discrete pulses in these Cretaceous rocks. And here it's the model of the alimentation, the feeding zone of the magmatic chamber that was related with a reverse fault. Here are some pictures of field where we can see the granitic rocks over the mafic complex. So we can see here clearly the sharp contact. And if we make a zoom here, we can see the figure on the right, where are different layers of the mafic rocks, mainly gabbros, and a sharp contact with the granitic rocks in the upper zone here in Cerro Castillo. Here we have a zoom of the granitic rocks, and we can see the same. We can see sharp contacts between the granitic layers or the granitic units, in this case by brittle intrusions. And here is a very beautiful photo of the intrusion and the outer contact of the Pluton with the metasedimentary rocks with these horsetail dikes. Here is a very, very, very detailed study that was made by Lidholt et al. And collaborators some years ago. They made a series of publications about the architecture of this Pluton based on geochemical and geochronological data. And they obtained very, very interesting results. Some of them was that this intrusion has these two clear areas, the felsic magmas in the upper zone that were emplaced by under-accretion. So the younger intrusions were emplaced below the olders, and the opposite with the mafic magmas by over-accretion. So the mafic magmas were accreted over the younger over the olders. And it's a clear geochemical link between these two suites of rocks according to AFC models. Well, but this is not spectacular just because of petrology. We have a very, very, very spectacular glacial landscape related to the last glaciation in this place. As I said before, we have here the Patagonian ice sheet. So this area was completely filled by glaciers in the last glacial maximum. So we have here at least 8 or 9 moraine complexes that determines the landscape of the area, and we have lakes that clearly reflects the glacial origin of the zone. And this activity allowed the outstanding outcrop of this intrusion. Here we have the paleogeographical reconstruction in the last. Here is Torres del Paine in the present, and in the last glacial maximum, where we can see that all the area was covered by ice. So this is the Glade Glacier that I shown in Google Earth, very, very close to Torres del Paine. It's behind these mountains, but it's part of the same national park, like a vestige of the glacial activity on the area. This is a spectacular site that it's possible to visit as a tourist. And here we can see another view of the rocks and the mountains of Torres del Paine. Here we can see also the clear glacial morphologies. These are clearly horns and are known as Cuernos del Paine. Regarding scientific tradition, this place is very remote, was inhabited until the 20th century. So the first explorations were made by Swedish geologists and explorers in the beginning of the 20th century, and by Alberto Maria de Agostini, a very famous Italian priest and mountaineer in Chile. There's a lot of publications and research, especially from the 70s, related to geochemistry, to structural geology, to petrology, and so on, and also geomorphology. But this place is not important and spectacular just because of geology and science. It has another very, very interesting values. For example, for us in Chile, it's proud. We are very proud of this site. It's an icon, a landmark of southern Chile, a landmark of Patagonia. For example, it's one of the covers of the IUGS webpage, have been the cover of the international edition of National Geographic, especially in the World's Most Beautiful Places edition. Was selected in an international contest as the 8th wonder in the world some years ago. And it's also the image of a banknote. I have one here. And it's also a very cheap banknote. So. And it's also the brand of beers, and it's like very, very iconic image for us as Chileans. And another important thing is that this the main icon of the national parks in Chile. We have more than 40 national parks, especially in Patagonia, in the southern part. We have one of the most ambitious and important projects for conservation in the world, which is Ruta de los Parques de la Patagonia, or the route of the parks of Patagonia, which include 17 national parks as a touristic and conservation route. And Torres del Paine is definitely the main icon and the landmark of this route. And here, if you want to know more about this project, you can watch our great national park documentary in Netflix, narrated by Barack Obama. And one episode it's dedicated completely to this project, and especially about biodiversity. There are also accommodations and tourist guides. It's a place that you can visit. So some arguments for the declaration as a geological heritage site. One is the petrological site, the spectacular intrusion, but also the landscape, this glacial morphology that is very iconic. And I think it's very important that it's a symbol of conservation and nature heritage in Chile. Just for finishing, I will just play some images of Torres del Paine National Park for you to know a little bit of this place, and you are invited to visit it. Muchas gracias.